Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday evening to you all. Hope you folks are doing great out there tonight. Had yourselves a fantastic Wednesday, and I hope everyone has been having a great week out there so far. Speaking of our week, things have been pretty calm, but that's going to change pretty dramatically as we are getting into our Thursday, which is tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. All 4 days are going to pose a risk of significant severe weather, especially for tornadoes and very large hail, but I'm sure one of these days are going to have a significant damaging wind threat also. So that's what we're here to do. We're going to break it all down for you folks in detail. But of course, the days that are a little bit closer to us, like tomorrow, even into Friday, we'll be able to get a little bit more detailed for you folks just because we have a better idea on what possibly could happen. As we get into Saturday and Sunday, a little bit more fuzzy. But I'm telling you, Saturday could be one of those days. And not a good way either. It could be one of those days where you just really have ripe conditions for significant severe weather, and tornadoes could certainly be in that risk also. So we're going to break it down what we do know, but just know that severe weather is going to be the main topic over the next several days, and we're going to be pumping out the content, pumping out these updates for you folks so you guys can be more aware of what potentially can happen in your neck of the woods. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Quick reminder, take advantage of those timestamps. You can jump ahead to certain sections of the video. I put a lot of timestamps on my video to help you guys out just so you can jump ahead to certain things. I tend to talk a lot. My videos are very long. You guys know that. So there's no hard feelings if you want to skip ahead to certain areas. Don't blame me one bit. If you guys got anything I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. I know a lot of people suffer from storm anxiety. If that's you, put it in the comments below. We'll pray for you. We'll look out for you. We'll encourage you. And we're here for you. So let's get rocking and rolling. So latest from the Storm Prediction Center. Well, we know as of this evening, we have an enhanced risk, which did extend a little bit from north to south. The hail threat, as far as the threat for significant hail, has expanded a little bit, but we have an enhanced risk all the way up here, almost in the Nebraska, Kansas state line, but south of it, basically to Colby, Kansas, all the way down here to just north of Abilene, but not including Abilene. Slight risk all the way down here to southern sections of west central Texas, all the way up here to northeast Colorado, including several counties in southern Nebraska. Then we got a level 1 out of 5 risk in the dark green, extending all the way up here to the northern plains, all the way down here into southern and southwestern sections of almost say Kansas, of Texas. So what is this driven off of? Okay, well, we'll briefly go over this. There's that tornado threat right here. Okay, that's going to be your highest tornado threat. But what I want to do here is look at the hail threat, because I'm going to zoom into this and it's going to cut off certain areas. But we're really going to zoom into this to give you guys a better idea geographically wise as far as where you are on this map if you're in this threat area, where your city is. Unfortunately, I don't have the maps that show all the small towns and cities, because the way the Storm Prediction Center graphics are broken up, I would have to pull up like 10 graphics for you folks. Just don't have the time to do that, unfortunately. But this is the hail threat. I want you guys to know this. The hail threat does extend all the way up to northeast Colorado, a significant hail threat. Okay, we have not only a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger, all the way up here into southern Nebraska, northeast Colorado, but also a 10% risk of significant hail, which is 2 inch in diameter or larger in the black outline region with the black dashes going in between it. And that's the same scenario deep down here in Texas too, like Midland, almost all the way to Fort Stockton, but Fort Stockton will most likely be on the drier side of the actual dry line, which we're going to talk about a lot in this video. So I wanted to show you that first, but let's zoom into this, to the highest threat level for tomorrow, for your Thursday. So there's the enhanced risk. I know there's no towns on this. I know. But Dodge City included in this, Woodward, and then basically the eastern counties of the panhandle of Texas, and one county basically of the panhandle of Oklahoma. And then this is including a good chunk of western Oklahoma. So all the way down into northern sections and northwestern sections of Texas. So what is this driven off of? Well, the tornado risk, if it would pull up for me, and here we go. Cool, we rocking now. All right, in the yellow, there is a 10% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. The brown, that's a 5% risk. Green, 2% risk. Same criteria. All right, but if you see these checker marks going into it, it's the same thing as what you see with this, right? You see these black dashes going in between it. Well, this is just pivotal weather's kind of outlook of what it looks like here. So the checker marks, that means not only is there a 10% risk of a tornado, There's also a 10% risk of a significant tornado, which is an EF2 or higher in this case. So there's a risk of strong tornadoes. All right. The hail threat is a big threat. All right. This is probably what this is more so driven off of, I would say. But, you know, in the yellow area, like I said, 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. In the red, that's a 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And then across the entire red area, just about, and a good chunk of the yellow, you have a black outline region with a checkered marks going in between it, crisscrossing lines. That means there's a significant shot at significant hail, which is 2 inches in diameter or larger. The wind risk is there, but it's definitely the lower category as far as all the risk of severe weather. Just a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. This could change. This could change as we get into tomorrow. So let's talk about the ingredients. And this might be the part that kind of bores people, but we're going to explain anyways. Jump ahead. I'll have it sectioned out well. But what's driving this? Well, it's your classic dry line setup. And if we look at dew points, surface moisture, remember, once you get dew points really in this area of the country, upper 50s or higher, well into the 60s really is what you need. This is really what we call a thermodynamic that supports severe weather. Thermodynamics is your surface moisture. How humid is it? How humid is it outside? Your CAPE levels, how high are they? Your storm fuel, your lapse rate, your surface temperatures. Those are your thermodynamics. And we'll talk about kinematics here in a second. So this is tomorrow morning. Not super humid out there along that dry line, but look how this builds. I want you to watch what happens here with the latest HRRR model. We get into tomorrow afternoon, 3-4 p.m. Look here in Amarillo. Your dews are actually beginning to drop. Dry line starting to set up a very tight gradient. It even gets even more tight as we get deeper into the evening. And watch this. As we are getting into tomorrow, getting closer to when the sun's setting. OOZ Friday. It's probably about 7 p.m., give or take an hour out here in Central Time. This is an intense, tight gradient looking dry line. This acts as a lifting mechanism for thunderstorms as you have a dramatic change in the environment as far as dry and moist air. So you got dew points in just the teens here, like in Amarillo and the western counties of Kansas and the western counties of the Panhandle of Oklahoma, but then to dramatically get dew points into the 60s. Okay, that is your dry line. If any supercells are going to form, which they most likely will, they're going to be along this dry line or just about an hour inside of it, right along here. What I want you to notice is up here, you know, this tongue of low-level moisture doesn't extend very far up into Nebraska. And I'm going to show you why that's an important big deal here in a second when I show you what the latest HRRR model shows. The tons of moisture out here in this region for any storms that do get going and then kind of surge into the moist sector. Going to be plenty of fuel in the atmosphere. And yeah, so that moist air, check it off the box, right? What about your CAPE levels in response to those higher dew points? Well, I mean, you already got CAPE building into this area, over 1,500 joules per kilogram, already building across this area of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. But you keep rolling here, and it escalates quickly, right? We start to get into the afternoon hours. That dry line really starts to become potent. And you get pockets of CAPE levels, mixed layer CAPE, over 3,000 joules per kilogram. Plenty of fuel in the atmosphere for these storms of fire. And then look at this little tongue right in here. You got to watch for any storms that form in this area. But there's a dramatic cutoff from the west to the north of what's making these storms more so elevated or surface. And, you know, certainly if you don't have a lot of CAPE, you don't have a lot of low-level moisture, you're going to have more of an elevated setup, which means you're probably not going to have a huge tornado threat with something like that, if any at all. We'll talk more on that here in a second. And this continues. That dry line is very dramatic. You go from no CAPE at all, no storm fuel, to tons of available fuel in the atmosphere very quickly as you get on the moist side of this dry line, the east side of it. So tons of fuel in the atmosphere, right? So we look at that, and it extends all the way into the late evening hours. After the sun sets, plenty of fuel for these storms to really eat up, okay? Next thing you look at, we looked at thermodynamics, we look at the kinematics, and we're just going to look at the low-level wind field here, what we call the low-level jets. What kind of kinematics do we have? Well, in response of a deepening surface low, which will probably get going off the Rockies somewhere in here, all right? As we are getting into Friday evening, you see these wind barbs here coming out the south. You got a ripe southerly flow bringing in all that low-level moisture. And yeah, you see how they kind of tilt and are moving out the southeast at this point. That is because they're kind of coming up to the surface low, which obviously has rotation around it. And you can see how this surface low right into here, the wind barbs kind of spin. It could be right into here, but either way, this surface low, as it deepens, which it will be, helps to increase that low-level wind field. Therefore, it increases low-level shear, and you got a pretty steady 35 to 45 embedded pockets of 50 knots low-level jets, which means winds are going at about, 45 to 55, 60 miles per hour, about a mile above our heads. Our low-level jets about a mile above our heads, 4,000 to 6,000 feet, give or take 1,000. Okay, so you're definitely going to have a broadening, if that's a word, basically a widening low-level jet in this area, and it will continue to increase into the overnight hours. So if any storms are still going, a lot of wind energy for this to work with. Okay, damaging winds could actually become a bigger deal as we get deeper into the night. All right, so we're talking about all these ingredients. You're like, Mitch, is there going to be a storm that forms or not? Well, you look at Thursday morning, we're probably going to have a lot of more elevated moisture over here in like central and eastern Kansas. So if you live in central and eastern Kansas, especially eastern Kansas and even eastern Oklahoma, all the way into areas of Missouri, just know that you're probably going to be dealing with some thunderstorms tomorrow. But just realize that these aren't the ones that we're really concerned about. But I will tell you, if you live in southeastern Kansas, these storms could pack a punch. Very large hail with these. I don't expect much of a tornado threat with these. But just be mindful, if you live in southeastern Kansas all the way like into the Springfield, Missouri area, some hefty storms tomorrow afternoon. It's after, watch what happens here. Nothing, right? This is around 5, 6 p.m. Nothing, right? Bang, storms get going. And this is like at 6 p.m. too. Sun's still up. There's going to be a lot of storm chasers along this dry line out here. And then the storms really just explode here. Okay, you got one cell right here. We don't know where these are going to fire. We just know that they're going to fire somewhere around here, if they do. This one right here, kind of on the northern edge of the, I would say just southeast of Guyman, Oklahoma. This could be potent. I mean, it has that look right there. It has that kind of that hook signature. It's not really hooking, but it has that feature where it's showing those darker colors kind of on the southwest flank of the storm. This is probably a supercell right here, Dodge City. Could this supercell come up and affect you guys? Not sure. And you see these storms well north of Dodge City. Well up here, these could be packing a punch too. But you just notice it's not widespread. We don't expect it to be widespread. You get closer to midnight, there's some storms in here forming again. Look at these storms forming down here in western Texas around midnight. These could pack a punch too. Very conditional threat down here, but then as they get going, that low-level jet really ramps up here. This really fuels for further lift and development of storms. And guys, we can have a pretty nasty complex of storms kind of sweeping across southern Oklahoma tomorrow night into the wee hours of the morning, Friday morning, across the Red River, even the northern counties of Texas right in here. This is 4 a.m., 5 a.m. Look at these storms blasting through Oklahoma City all the way to Tulsa. And we could wake up to a pretty loud ruckus in like Fayetteville, Arkansas, Fort Smith, and eastern Oklahoma, even all the way down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area for Friday. So HRRR model really, biting on this now. And we kind of look at the NAM. What does the NAM show for tomorrow with this setup also? Same similar thing. Show some storms, but definitely a lot more weird in nature. But the HRRR model, I think, now has the right idea. And you look at the HRRR model as far as that updraft holistic swath. Show some, maybe some elevated rotation up here. But you remember that storm I showed you right here in northern Texas, Oklahoma? Just that one little storm is bringing that area of strong rotation. Updraft holistic swath is just trying to tell us whether, on this particular run of the HRRR model, where there could be rotation with some of these storms. And this just goes to show you, wherever a storm does form out here in western Oklahoma, areas of the panhandle of Texas, eastern panhandle, and western Kansas, I'm telling you, they can produce all hazards, guys. Even watch these couple storms that form maybe later tomorrow night. So, and a great example of the significant tornado parameter, guys, is this. So, we get all the way into tomorrow evening. Look how the significant tornado parameter around late evening tomorrow evening spikes to over 10s, 11s, 13s, just maxes out the colors into here. But just remember, it's a good example. Just because you have the ingredients for tornadoes, if you don't get a storm that forms, then, it's whatever. You just have a lot of fuel in the atmosphere, a lot of ingredients, but it's not being tapped into. So that'll be the case. It's the case a lot along dry line setups, but you are most likely going to get 3-4 powerful storms that do form in this area. Now, not to leave my folks hanging up here a little bit further in Kansas, same deal, guys. The HRR model shows a powerful storm forming right here, kind of in the far northern, northwest counties of Kansas. And then it quickly drifts and kind of becomes more widespread open here as it gets into Nebraska. But I want to note here, and somebody on Twitter, on social media, made a really good point. These storms up here, the further they get up to the Nebraska-Kansas line, the more elevated they get. And what happens is it outruns the favorable environment. So you got a lot of low-level moisture chilling right into here, but it kind of goes all the way up into here, right? But it kind of stops right into here. And you got dew points in like the upper 50s, but I don't know if you're going to get favorable moisture that really supports tornadoes once these storms get up here. But I might be wrong. We might end up getting a tornado up here in the Nebraska-Kansas line. But that's just something to note. That's why you don't just look at these model runs and, run on off to the hills. And, you got to see what the environment looks like. Because you could have some gigantic hail producers in more of an elevated environment. You got elevated and surface. Surface means that you're really working with the ingredients that could support tornadoes. This rotation that could really latch the surface, forming a tornado. Elevated meaning you're just lacking thermodynamics, really, the completion of ingredients for severe weather, and that's what happens when they're more elevated. So, and I will mention, guys, as we get into the evening hours, these storms will become much more widespread into like the wee hours of the morning Friday. So you're dealing with some nasty storms, like in areas of central and eastern Kansas. Again, like you start the morning off, a lot of nasty weather into Omaha, up here into Lincoln, Nebraska. And it could be quite active in the wee hours of the morning. So be aware of this. The updraft Felicity swath does show that cell right in here, but it dramatically kind of cuts off right in here. So we just got to see what happens. There's another long-range HRR model that's about to come out here in about an hour or two, so it will be interesting to see what that shows. All right, so that was a mouthful. Just talking about Thursday. We're going to end up getting a little bit less detailed as we continue to move forward, but there's a gigantic slight risk for Friday. And I do think we're probably going to wake up tomorrow morning to a enhanced risk somewhere in this outlook. I think they'll keep a slight risk down here, but I could see them putting an enhanced risk right here in Iowa for a more higher-end tornado threat near the surface low. I'll show you why here in a second. You always play the surface low if you're a storm chaser. You always got to be aware if you don't give a lick about chasing storms and just want to be safe, and you're not one of those people crazy like I am that drives towards the storms. When you're close to that surface low, you got to be careful. In Iowa, you will be. So right now, what we do know is level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather in this entire region. Stretching from Waco, Texas, all the way up to just north of Des Moines, almost all the way up to the Sioux Falls region. Marginal risk of severe weather around it. What is this driven off of? All we know, 15% risk of severe weather within 25 miles in a given location in this yellow. And in the black outline region embedded in that yellow, that's a 10% risk of significant severe weather. What is that going to be? Damaging winds, very large hail, or tornadoes? Well, in my opinion, this is going to be hail down here and up here, but I do think you're going to get a 10% hatched risk of tornadoes right in here. I really think we'll wake up to an enhanced risk somewhere up in here. Okay, so, we kind of go back to this, right? What's driving these Thursday and Friday? We're not going to hang out on Thursday too long. Area lower pressure, this is bringing all the ingredients up. If you don't know what we're looking at here, we're looking at higher pressure in the oranger colors, redder colors, and then lower pressure in the blue. Flow goes around both of these features differently. But as this area in darker blue, watch it as what we call ejects across the plains. We're getting to Friday morning. This area of darker blue is right here. Then we got another one behind it. That is what we're going to talk about here in a second. That's going to drive Saturday and Sunday's event. This shortwave trough, upper trough, upper low, whatever you want to call it, has a surface low with it and then a cold front attached to it. The surface low is going to be right into here, right? So what this is doing is flow is going, nope, that's not it. Flow is going around this like this, right? Lower pressure, it does this in the northern hemisphere. We talk about this a lot in hurricane season. So what this is doing is, like I said, flow is going like this. This is pulling in that low-level moisture all the way up here, that humid, rich, moist air. At the same time, okay, we got this expansive wind field being pulled with this shortwave trough that's stretching across what's going to be in the surface low. You'll have an embedded, even stronger low-level jet. What's going to be a very moist air mass setting up right through here, most likely. A lot of moist air, your deep moisture. Okay, so kinematic wind field spreading over that. Your kinematics is your favorable wind field aloft, your wind energy aloft, your flow aloft, and the low levels and the upper levels. So that's what this does. That's what's driving that. So we keep on going. And here's a great example of it. Watch as we look at dew points in this setup. A little bit more of a broader look. This is for Friday morning. What I want you to watch here is watch how these dew points, these deeper moisture dew points in the 60s begin to creep into the 60s all the way up into Iowa very quickly. For example, this is Friday morning. Dew points only in like the 30s, 40s, and 50s in Iowa. We get to about lunchtime, they're rising even more. And then we get to about, I would say Friday evening, you're starting to get some dew points into the 60s into southern Iowa. Now, I know I circled the enhanced risk in Iowa, but the only thing that might prevent Iowa from really producing tornado-wise is a lack of thermodynamics. How deep is your moisture going to get pulled further north? I think you're going to get some deeper moisture further in Iowa than what this is showing. This is only showing dew points in the 50s, not super humid air. You can see where your triple point is being met right in here. So it could be a deal where maybe Missouri has the higher end tornado risk, where you have ample amount of moisture, dew points in the 60s. And of course, you get down here to eastern Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, even northern Louisiana. Plenty of low-level moisture, dew points in the 60s, even some 70s along the Gulf Coast. So you definitely get that rich, moist air mass in place right here. So in response, you look at the Cape levels. We can kind of look at that really fast. And mixed layer Cape. Wow, that's definitely not what I wanted, but that's cool. Pivotal weather can be very finicky, guys. Let's make sure it's not. Here we go. We go back to that time frame. Oh, it looks like we skipped it. We go back to Friday morning. And there, there's all your energy in the atmosphere. This is for Friday evening. Not a lot of energy up here, but that's enough. 500 to 1,000 joules per kilogram mixed layer Cape is enough here. So I do think you could get an enhanced risk sliding right here into western, southwestern Iowa. More fuel, certainly. 1,000, 2,000 joules per kilogram riding along kind of a frontal boundary that's going to weaken pretty quick and kind of just get kind of pushed aside as more moist air gets pulled northward by another upper trough we're about to talk about. A lot of moisture down here in Texas, but are you going to have a forcing mechanism to really get any storms going? But this is for Friday evening. The energy is there. And, the next thing you'll look at is that wind field, and we'll look at the mid-levels. Sure enough, you can see this shortwave trough here, embedded surface low into here too. And as we're getting into our Friday morning, you already have this 70, 80 knot mid-level jet riding over the middle of the country. And this continues. We'll have to get this going here. This continues to really expand over the entire eastern Great Plains into the Midwest, into the Missouri Valley, even the Mississippi Valley here. And this is your classic look. You got 21Z here. This is Friday afternoon. You got plenty of forcing in the atmosphere, plenty of just a supportive mid-level jet riding over this very moist air mass. So what do we have? We have overlapping conditions. You got overlapping kinematics and overlapping thermodynamics. It's just, where is your best low-level shear going to be? And if you look at that low-level jet, for example, off the European, and we kind of get back to Friday really quick, y'all bear with me, and we look at the best low-level energy, it's everywhere. This low-level jet's huge. There's that embedded pocket I would watch here in Iowa, but it's down here in Missouri too, Arkansas. So, big severe weather day. And as far as what the radar is going to look like, all we know is we start off Friday morning. There's already storms ongoing down here, stretching from Texas, eastern Oklahoma, western Arkansas. We got storms in Missouri, more elevated in nature. But as we continue to move deeper into the morning, the afternoon hours, look how this clears out. And then surface low somewhere in here Watch what happens. You see that thing you don't like to see right near the surface low. You got tornadic storms, most likely ongoing. And we'll just go on and take a deeper look at Iowa here. And surface low right over here. Watch how these storms kind of dramatically get going right over Omaha, maybe even back to Lincoln. And these storms will have an opportunity, if you have good what we call thermodynamics, better low-level moisture, to produce tornadoes here in western Iowa, southwestern Iowa. And we just got to watch them. I definitely think there could be a damaging wind threat with these too. But you got to watch these storms right in here. Definitely need to watch. And, you know, to kind of broaden this back up, look at the, look at the south central U.S. Don't want to ignore my folks down here. We're going to have an opportunity for some storms deeper in Missouri, Arkansas too. We'll just have to see. We might be lacking lift down here, but for any storms that do form down here, Arkansas, Missouri, they could pack a punch. We just got to get a little bit closer to it. Next thing we'll talk about is Saturday. Now listen, we don't have all the details for Saturday. There's a lot of chatter about this one in the weather community, the storm chasing community. What we know is there is already an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5 risk at day 4, which is our Saturday, in the dark orange, 15% risk, level 2 out of 5, and the yellow area, extending almost all the way to Marquette, Michigan, all the way down here to the heart of Texas. But I mean, this enhanced risk, guys, over some higher populated areas, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, almost down to Dallas, but not quite, Wichita. I mean, this looks like one of your classic setups. So we got to watch this. The discussions down here, it talks about this setup. This is driven off something totally different. Same kind of feature, but it's just different. But yeah, this is, you know, Saturday has a chance to be a big day. The same thing that's driving Saturday will drive Sunday. And it's kind of like the same thing as Friday almost, but maybe tweaked a little bit further east. Same risk area. We got a slight risk, level 2 out of 5, all the way from southern Wisconsin, all the way through Dallas, almost all the way to Waco, Lufkin, Texas, Shreveport, including Little Rock, Springfield, St. Louis, back to Kansas City, just about Peoria. So, same thing driving both. And you know, we'll kind of go back to this and look again. There's Friday's system. Here comes Saturday's system. This weekend's pretty dramatically. Could even bring maybe a severe weather risk somewhere for the Great Lakes region Saturday. We'll see what happens. But look at this deep area of low pressure right here. This huge upper trough that really digs down, quickly becomes what we call negatively tilted, which means, you know, it's going to start to tilt like this. Okay, once it starts to tilt that way, it becomes negatively tilted. It begins to eject, and surface low deepens, and then you really maximize all the ingredients for severe weather. So Saturday afternoon, this thing's beginning to get that tilt on, eject across the plains. And for you folks in the eastern U.S. wondering, well, why isn't these severe weather risks shifting east? It's because of this ridge. You see this big area of orange, red? It's a ridge of high pressure, basically keeping us safe, keeping us very warm, comfortable, and just chilling, like easy like Sunday morning. I mean, it's just, this is preventing these troughs. This ridge is basically forcing this. There's a flow around this ridge that goes like this, right? And kind of, yeah, like that. So, you know, with a weird extension right here, weaker up here. So what does this do? Well, I mean, the flow around this lower pressure goes like this. So it almost works in tandem. So therefore, it basically forces this to go like this, not like that. Okay, so that's kind of why you're not getting severe weather risk like in the eastern U.S. But, you know, this brings in all the moisture, once again, bringing that low-level moisture, deep wind field for Saturday, and then it does it for Sunday as this begins to scoot eastward. All the ingredients shift into this way in this area Sunday, right into here. Okay, wind field goes over like that, deep moisture riding in like that, overlapping ingredients just like that. So, last thing we'll look at is the ingredients for Saturday and Sunday. We're not in range of these mesoscale models that are, you know, we're in range of a couple of them, but they're not reliable. Like people are showing like the long range NAM, which I think is just terrible in my opinion. But anyways, not going to get into that. But Saturday morning, this is the impressive thing about Saturday and all the wrong ways. You already have a ton of deep moisture down here. I mean, dew points deep into the 60s, low 70s down here in Texas. I mean, already Saturday, you've recovered from that weak cold front from the first shortwave trough that moved through Thursday into Friday. Your moisture is already recovering. You got dew points well up here into the 60s, all the way into the upper Midwest. And guys, I mean, we start to get into deeper into Saturday morning, getting into Saturday afternoon. I mean, just a deep, moist, broad, moist sector in this area. Little mini dry line set up, but it does look like this risk area will certainly be further east than tomorrow's risk area. But, I mean, you got deep moisture. Once you start to get dew points above 65, you're starting to get into some pretty deep moisture, especially this time of the year. And you can't ignore, I mean, you got dew points into the 60s into the Midwest, the Great Lakes region, Saturday afternoon. And it's because you're still kind of getting some influence from that weakening system from Thursday and Friday that still kind of yanked some higher moisture at the surface into this region. But tons of moisture in the atmosphere down here. And it's the same thing, man. You get into Sunday here. Tons of moisture riding in this area. It's beginning to get a little bit more skinny. But, I mean, the moisture is even building into the eastern U.S. So you got this huge moist sector building all the way into the northern portions of the country. You can check that off as far as thermodynamics. And, of course, like always, we'll look at our CAPE levels in this case. Let's see what we look like here when we get into Saturday. And, I mean, already in the Saturday morning, gosh, you got CAPE levels over 25 to 3,000 joules per kilogram already building up into Oklahoma and Texas. And then, I mean, it's there. The only thing, in my opinion, that's going to stop Saturday from being a bigger day is, in my opinion, will be too much convection, which would be a good thing. It would choke off the instability for later in the day. That's the only thing. I think you're going to have almost all the ingredients in play. It's just, do you have a lot of morning convection Saturday morning, which some guidance is really showing there being. We just got to watch. A lot of energy as we start to get into Saturday afternoon, and we can look at Sunday, and the energy will rebuild. This will be definitely enough fuel, these pockets of higher CAPE levels, well over 1,000 joules per kilogram. So, last thing you'll look at for Saturday and Sunday, this wind field. All right, Saturday morning, this is your mid-level jet in response to this upper trough. And guys, this pivots right into this region. Right in this region. We call this like the exit region right here. And your moist air is really built into this region. And you got this mid-level jet that's potent. I mean, definitely strong enough, supporting lift for plenty of lift for thunderstorms, right? And then wind energy for damaging winds. You're probably going to have the low-level shear in place in this case. Low-level jet will be cranking in this area with a deepening surface low somewhere, probably scooting across the southern plains, something like that, into Kansas. And, yeah, there's going to be a lot of kinematic energy in the atmosphere driving the wind energy needed for severe weather. And it's going to last into the overnight hours, too. And then Sunday, once again, it kind of looks like Friday. Expansive wind field supporting lift for thunderstorms and wind energy for thunderstorms riding right over that moist sector with all that storm fuel. Guys, that's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. We'll do it all again in the morning. Y'all have a great night, and I'll talk to you soon.